Hello, I'm Donald Leggett, and welcome to the latest Focus IR London Southeast CEO interview. I'm joined by Adam Davidson, and he's the CEO of Trident Royalties. Who are Trident? Trident are a fast-growing, diversified mining royalty company, and Adam joins me today to give a quarterly update and to explain why royalty companies are a good way to get broad exposure to the mining and commodities markets. Greetings, Adam. Adam, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, now you're going to take us through the quarterly update and more right now. Let's start with the 8 million that you paid for the near production silver royalty in Mexico. So why did that interest you, and why silver?
Yeah, so that was a transaction we posted in the second quarter. As you say, $8 million transaction, $7 million paid up front, and then another $1 million will be paid over once we receive a milestone payment. So the reason it was of interest is it's a good accretive transaction. A point in fact is that milestone payment is due from the operator of the project 12 months after first silver production, and it's 8.75 million. So as soon as that payment's received, we're immediately into profit. And then it's got a good sort of 30+ year mine life in front of it from there. It's an enormous deposit, and the operator's looking to ramp it up to 3.5 million ounces of production a year, with first production from on-surface stockpiles slated for the second half of this year, probably late this year. And then they flagged first fresh ore production first half of next year. So near-term producing royalty with very good economics. And with regards to why silver, it's a commodity that we didn't have exposure to within our portfolio initially. So we like to have broad, diversified exposure to the entirety of the mining sector is the ultimate objective. So getting some silver into the portfolio was important to us, and we like silver generally as a commodity. Obviously, it shares many characteristics of gold, but north of 50% of silver is actually used for electronics. In fact, the concentrate from this project is likely to go to Samsung UK. Which will be sending it internally to Samsung production facilities around the world as a component into their electronics.
And for those folks who are less familiar with Trident Royalties, is it possible just to summarize Trident in a nutshell? What is Trident? What exactly have you built over the last 3 years?
Yeah, so we've acquired a pool of mining royalties, which effectively entitle us to a percentage of production from the underlying asset. So, for example, that silver asset we were talking about, we're entitled to 1.5% of their revenue effectively from that project. And the beautiful thing about royalties is they're uncapped. So if that project doubles or triples production or silver quadruples in price, we get our 1.5% of their revenue regardless. But we can't be diluted down. Whereas if you're an equity investor in a mining company, obviously, if they raise equity or if their costs blow out and you see their profit margins shrink, you're exposed to that as a shareholder. We're not exposed to that as a royalty holder. So really, then the purpose of Trident is to aggregate these royalties into a portfolio to give investors broad exposure. So when we first listed, we had just a single iron ore royalty giving exposure to iron ore, which is used in steel making primarily. But you fast forward to today, we've got iron ore, silver, copper, gold, most significantly lithium, and looking to expand further on that and get sort of the full suite of mining commodity exposure ultimately.
So I understand 2022 is quite quiet on the transaction front. So how has 2023 been so far? And are you seeing mining project funding coming back? Can you give us an insight into the industry?
Yeah, we certainly have. I mean, first half of 2022, we did the Preciosa silver transaction that we mentioned, and then one smaller mineral sands transaction. I think we're teeing up for a much busier second half of the year. We've got a number of deals that are in the works, with the caveat that until a deal is done, obviously it's not done, so they could all complete or none of them could complete. You never quite know until everybody's signed on the dotted line, but we're feeling pretty optimistic. We've got a strong balance sheet to support all these transactions. So looking forward to hopefully some good news flow here over the course of the back half of the year. And as you said, is in terms of the market coming back, I think for royalties it certainly has. My experience prior to Trident was in mining private equity, and the saying is there's a time to deploy capital and there's a time to sit on your hands. And I think we're in a deploy capital phase where equity markets have softened, so the mining companies don't want to go out there and do equity raises at low share prices. So they're open to royalties. So it's a time for us to layer in royalties over good economic projects. Inevitably, the cycles will turn. and these projects will be propelled forward in more buoyant markets, and will have gotten royalty over long life assets.
Okay, which takes us very neatly to the quarterly update. Talk us through the news flow and the highlights of the last quarter, if you could, please, Adam.
Yeah, it was a solid quarter for us, just under 2.4 million in revenue for the quarter. This was an increase year over year, quarterly increase of 12%, which I think if you look at our past few quarterlies, we've only been around 3 years, but the track record is become pretty evident now, where every quarter we're sort of ticking upwards with regards to revenue. And then for those familiar with our portfolio, many would know that we've got assets that are in the construction phase. A couple of which we've touched on, one being Preciosa, the silver project. Obviously, that one's very near cash flow, so we'd be expecting to see it materialize next year, and you'll see that revenue on the list, whereas it's not there today. And most importantly, Thacker Pass, our large lithium royalty. This is our largest asset on a NAV basis, depending on which brokers you're looking at. With regards to research, 25 to 30% of our NAV, net asset value, is in the Thacker Pass lithium royalty. Well, that project is moving forward pretty meaningfully. In fact, we were on site in Q2 to visit the project and the tech facility that neighbors it, and I'm pretty excited to see the progress. Obviously, General Motors has invested in that project. It's in construction now, so as we look forward, we'd expect to see this revenue continue to march forward as assets like that turn on. And then as well, over the quarter, we listed
Can we talk Thacker Pass judicial appeal? I mean, that must have been a big moment when that
was. Yeah. So for us, the big appeal was really in Q1, and when the judge ruled in favor of maintaining the permit, we were all breathing a sigh of relief. We were confident in the direction it was moving, but nevertheless wanted to see that litigation cleared. And then there was a second appeal that you're referencing that was cleared recently. That was an appeal of the appeal, effectively, and from all intents and purposes, as we understand it, that's sort of the final appeal. So now it's sort of full steam ahead. The project's being built. That current lithium spot prices, once this project's fully ramped up, it spits out to us circa 35 million a year in revenue for a multi-decade life. It's a pretty exciting asset in the sense that it's over its life, it's not going to pay us sort of in the tens of millions or hundreds of millions. It's sort of north of billions. It's a very, very meaningful asset. It's hard to highlight to the market, and it's a couple years from first production, so maybe it's not quite as tangible to some investors, but it's a very, very important asset for Trident.
Frankly, very lucrative. Okay, let's talk deal flow. You mentioned that you've several deals that you hope to get over the line in the second half. You've got cash of $30 million. Is it possible to give us a little bit more detail as to what you might be looking at? I understand these things are all very sensitive, commercially sensitive, but what can you tell us?
Yeah, I'll have to be careful with what I say, but I can give you a bit of color in that. But we're very, very busy at the moment with regards to transactions that we're reviewing. We're looking at things, a spread of, we are looking at a couple precious metals royalties. I think we always sort of color ourselves as we're primarily focused on base and battery metals, but we want to remain open and opportunistic when it comes to precious metals, just given that's a more competitive sector. But if we can find a compelling gold royalty, which we've done in the past, we do want to be able to acquire those. But when I look at the spread of transactions we're contemplating at the moment, it's exactly that, a little bit of precious metals, but primarily dominated by battery metals and base metals. So as mentioned, hopefully we'll have some news here in the near term as we progress some of these transactions.
Okay, I was very interested to see that you made a successful exit at Lake Rebecca. You sold the royalty on there to Franco-Nevada at quite a substantial profit. Is that a good example of how you see the portfolio operating? Is that how it ought to be run? You buy and sell and build your assets that way?
I would say we're probably more reluctant sellers. I don't think we're certainly not royalty traders. In a certain scenario where the value is just immensely compelling, where it would take many, many years for us to get that value by retaining the royalty, if we can bring that forward to today, that's something we'll look at. But by and large, we're a buy and hold. We want to get good royalties over good projects and aggregate the portfolio and build out scale. That said, in the case of that particular transaction, we got about a 2.5 times return on our money in the space of 2 years. So very compelling return proposition. And ultimately, it's NAV accretive per share, where we're adding to the value of shareholders' shares by having done that transaction. And that's the name of the game at the end of the day. So we want to remain open-minded, and whatever's going to unlock value, that's what we'll pursue.
And that takes us neatly again to 2022, where your share price actually went up 37%, and the AIM market, if you take that as a benchmark, went down 30%. So AIM had a dreadful year, and you had a brilliant year. Put that in context for us. Explain that.
Yeah, I think there are probably a few facets to it. One was some transactions. We did our largest transaction to date, completed early in 2022, and then we bolted on another smaller affiliated transaction a couple months thereafter. But from that transaction on a portfolio of gold offtakes, you started seeing some more meaningful revenue come into the portfolio. We also recut our debt, so we lowered our cost of capital, and that's a sort of ever-present continuing project to continue to refinance and lower our cost of capital as we continue to grow and the portfolio continues to crystallize its value. So quite a few initiatives over the space of 2022, as well as progress at Thacker and other things that I think drove the share price growth. It's been a little quiet so far this year, but as mentioned, I think markets have softened, and we're in a good position to take advantage of that and deploy some of that 30 million that we've got in the bank. So we're looking forward to a back half of this year.
Okay, this is a good opportunity for asking you why the broad portfolio. You do mining, royalties, streams, offtakes, but across a broad range of commodities, whereas your competitors, your peers, have a more focused strategy. So why have you decided to differentiate yourself and go broad?
Yeah, this really comes down to the genesis of Trident as a royalty company. I mean, myself and my colleague who jumped into Trident and launched the vehicle both come from a mining private equity fund and had written royalties ourselves, primarily focused on equity and mezz debt investments, but it wasn't uncommon to tack on a royalty. And what we found was, despite the mining royalty sector being an $80 billion aggregate market cap sector, as you say, most have a very narrow focus, in particular focused on precious metals, gold in particular. So if we were out there generating royalties in the non-precious sector, there are really only a handful of royalty companies that would look at an asset like that. And that was a little bit perplexing, because a dollar from a copper royalty or a mineral sands royalty is the same as a dollar from a gold royalty. And you can just unlock value in non-precious metals royalties in a way that can be pretty challenging in a more competitive landscape with 20 plus gold royalty focused companies out there. So that's really the crux of the Trident strategy. As I said, we want to remain open-minded if we stumble across a good value gold royalty, and obviously the Rebecca royalty was one, and we were able to take advantage of that. We will acquire gold royalties when and where we see value, but really the focus is in non-precious. That's where we see the real pool of potential.
Oh, interesting. Okay, finally, what's your investment summary? If you would, you've already given us a real flavor of the business, but investment summary time, and why might now? Is the timing quite good to get Trident on your watch list, would you say?
Yeah, I certainly think it is, and I guess I put my money where my mouth is, because both myself and our CFO recently bought shares, which we were in an open period, and so it was announced publicly. But so I'm happy to get more Trident exposure into my portfolio, and it's certainly my biggest holding and the company that I know best. So I'm pretty excited about what we got in front of us. I think with a good team that I think now has a very tangible track record of unlocking value, a balance sheet with 30 million to support future acquisitions, and then just the lineup of potential transactions in front of us. I'm feeling pretty excited about the future, and with assets within the portfolio continuing to ramp up. We spoke about Thacker Pass, but it's not the only asset in the portfolio. Victoria Gold, Blyvor Gold, some of these assets we're seeing production accelerate, and there's a lot of value in that. And I don't think it's fully appreciated by the market. So part of my job is to go out there and bang the drum and let people know what we're doing, because I think there's some exciting stuff to come.
Adam Davidson, CEO at Trident Royalties, thank you very much indeed for that. That was absolutely terrific. What a great operational update. For more company information and to access the company bulletin board, please go to the Trident pages on London Southeast. And meanwhile, do follow us on Twitter at London Southeast, and also on @_FocusIR_, or register on London Southeast YouTube to receive alerts to our next Trident Royalties interviews. Thank you very much indeed for watching.